So just real quick on the title, the art of data. A lot of times when we use this terminology, it means like some sort of art about the data, but this is actually data creating art, artistic outputs. Creative artistic expression is the domain that I'm interested in talking about here. And not surprisingly, in a world where we're using Gen AI to do these creative artistic outputs, the data is going to matter and the way we organize data matters. And it needs to be done a little bit differently than what we've been doing in the modern data stack. So at Sean's urging, I'm going to tell you a little bit of a story about how I got to this sort of problem because, well, I consider myself a creative person. I don't consider myself a creative person, right? Creative arts person. So no offense to all the creative people in the audience that live on either side of that spectrum. But started out my career in academia as a professor at NYU Stern School of Business and Marketing. And I did a lot of work on data augmentation. All right, going back to like the work of Tanner and Wong, JASA 1989, building on that sort of stuff for models for marketing impact measurement, basically. And that's really key to this because prediction is a great way now to actually fix a lot of our data problems. And that's what modern models are allowing us to do. Then I spent a bunch of time working on developing software, SaaS software, MarTech for marketing impact measurement, bringing a lot of the work that I did in academia to marketing management and measuring the impact of marketing across the different investments that they were making and across their audiences and the different creative they were putting into market. And there I learned a lot about the importance of data ontology or figuring out ways to organize data flexibly such that you can make decisions about how you want to utilize it post-process. And then finally, I spent 10 years doing SaaS software products, and then I spent a lot of time with users that I really couldn't figure out what the challenge was, like why I couldn't get them to use the product. And in my domain, marketing agencies are really a big player in this space. And for advertisers, in between marketing, MarTech software, ad tech software, and the advertiser exists this marketing agency. They are managed and driven by creatives, and they have service types of business models. So I had to learn more about this. I went to work for a holdco. That named Plus company that has about 30 more global marketing service agencies to get firsthand knowledge about how I could overcome the user acceptance sort of challenges around that. But the key takeaways I want you to have here is like data folks is that what is really important is understanding the data generation process. This is all about the ideal data that I want to answer the problem. Because now with very powerful prediction, I can get that data from the data that I have. Right, that's what data augmentation is about at scale in production systems. And it's really about understanding the fundamental nature of the problem that I'm trying to characterize and the particles that make it up. Like what are the fundamental atoms of the phenomena that I'm trying to understand? For me and for marketers, it's about customers and influencing those customers. So it's their journey through the marketplace, the touch points that they're seeing along the way, and the actions that they're taking. And that's the thing I'm after. I don't have that data quite often. We understand all the privacy regulations, cookie apocalypse, all of this sort of stuff we've been talking about. But there is lots and lots of data, and we have more and more data, and we can actually learn about those journeys from the data that we have and get the data that we need to serve the business applications that we want. And another big part of this is how we organize the data for models that are going to use, so if my ultimate idea is to measure the impact of a particular marketing touch point, one, I need to predict that touch point, not just assume I have the data. And two, I have to organize my data in a way such that I have a model that can take data in a less processed form. Right? In the modern data stack, we're over-processing data. We're taking intelligence or information out of it when we put it into some sort of structural well-structured form that most machine learning algorithms that we've been working with for the past 20 years like to have it in. We don't need to do that. We can have data that's semi-structured, different levels of aggregation, and we can bring it to the models at that earlier stage. So that's part of the algorithm development, but that's the idea. A little reminder that all AI is prediction, and this whole process of humans' interaction with AI And the way that humans work and what artificial intelligence does is there's a prediction and a judgment component, right? There's some sort of pure prediction. We put some structure on it. So it output, there's some sort of output that's useful to us, like a sentence that actually responds to a prompt that we have. And in this era, we are decoupling this AI prediction from the human judgment. And then we're evolving it. We're encoding judgment, whether it's by saying the example's good, the example's bad. We are changing the structure of our models, the way we tokenize the data, all of these sort of things to evolve the AI such that it performs better, giving it different dimensions for scale. And a lot of people in the space have thought about AI as being augmenting people or what people do, but I think of it more as like humans augmenting the AI. Right, that's how AI evolves according to this process where human judgment is being encoded in there, and there's a lot of aspects to that. So AI is a prediction machine, right? It's prediction at the beginning and the end of the day, whether you have a small model or a large model, using some sort of classic ML approach or a large language model, or encoding some sort of specific job into an agent. I'm interested in creative domains like visual performance, music design, and language arts. And I'm interested mostly, as somebody who works for a private equity-backed holding company, transforming the economic performance of the business by, unfortunately, removing very creative artists from this process and making the business more performant in that way. As well as better, faster, cheaper for the customers, right? The person who's going to win this marketing service game is the one that's going to offer the same stuff or better stuff for much cheaper and faster. And that's what a lot of advertisers are looking for today. So as we know, I was watching this, Seth Rogen has this new show, The Studio. I think it's on Hulu or something like that. But one of the episodes, he reminded me of this Picasso line, good artists borrow, great artists steal. So inherently there's an IP question that's been at play here. And great ideas in art are freely available, especially as scientists and software developers that haven't been getting paid or at most getting a citation for this stuff. We're a little bit more comfortable with it than some mainstream pop artists and stuff like that selling their music. But social media influencers are putting out creative content freely. So there's all this idea that great art should be free to the world, but then there's also the benefit of having data organized in a way that allows you to actually account for the use of the intellectual property or the ideas within it. A great application for blockchain, of course, there, and having immutable ledgers and smart contracts. And so I argue that the more that you fall into using data and models and organizing it in this way, the better you will be remunerated or at least acknowledged for your great creative ideas to the extent they are. So it's a balance here. On one side, great ideas should be free. On the other side, they should be paid for, and we have paradigms for that now. But the new creative director, and the creative director I have in mind is the one working at the marketing agency, the CEO of Orchestrated Agents, and here's just a little bit of a framework for data as creative inspiration. You have your essential foundations, which you can document in a blockchain, like data models and compute, your exceptional art outputs, and then the ability to actually measure the art. So this is pretty critical in the way that you're organizing the data, is breaking it down in terms of its attributes or its component parts. Some of that's structured data, unstructured data, its language, its images, all of these sort of things. But the more that you can break it down, the more that you can actually use the data output to create new stuff that's better performant for the business. So if I understand the way a particular marketing touch point, in my case, is impacting a customer's decision that I want to influence them as an advertiser, then if I can use that data as an input or a prompt in generating the actual new piece of art or creative output that I'm going to place on Instagram or TikTok or one of these places, it's going to work better. And it's not just going to be this divine process that we currently have today, where creatives are coming up with a big idea, making some artistic expressions and content, and then deploying them into the market, into different places for different audiences. So What is key to this is this idea that ontology is knowledge organized for AI. And we want to maximize the information extracted from all the types of data that's available to us. So we don't want to overprocess it. And it's becoming easier to specify models that don't require you to overprocess it, or layer models. So if you're thinking about this example that I keep playing up, which is the customer journey, I need to predict the touch points in the customer journey, their timestamp, be able to assign attributes to those things. Where did it happen? It happened on Instagram. It had this particular creative of this many pixels, and on and on and on. And you know, ultimately measure the impact of that touch point. And I can do those things at the same time. It's not a linear process where first I have to figure out the data, then I have another model to train this stuff. You can actually embed those things into one another. And then when it comes to like different modes of output, and this is more on the output side, I can use some sort of agentic architecture to bring those things together. So I'll show you an example here shortly. What are the sort of things a creative team at an agency does, and how I would use different agents to assemble that. These are two other things. Performance tracking is going to be key to feeding back into the creation of better creative, and the particleization, or how do I break down a particular piece of creative to understand the impact of those elements of a creative output, such that I can measure them and then power that into better creative in my flywheel here. So this is like the typical process that an agency goes to bring a campaign to market. Lots of steps. You engage with the client. You have several different teams: strategists, creatives, content producers, people that are working to execute on the media, and all of this stuff. By the time you've evaluated it, takes at least a quarter. That's a lot of time. But AI allows us to compress all of these steps quite a bit and actually do it in a multi-threaded way. So you start with some understanding of your customers in the market. If you're an advertiser that already has brand messaging and product in the market, and you can start using Gen AI to create outputs that are formatted for the different media channels that you're deploying them to, and do so against your very specific business objectives, and send them to the right people, and then start to do those things all at once, where you're figuring out for very specific people what to send them and how to evolve your idea. So it's more of an always-on thing rather than this periodic campaign. Go back to the agency, come up with a new idea, and figure out how to express it across different channels. So here's just one sharp example of how one of our agencies is doing this. Citizen is a global PR agency that serves some of the largest marketers, and this is the sort of data that we have in mind: RSS feeds, information from news feeds, calendar information, online conversations, scraping the web for social conversations. So this is all the stuff that you can imagine being informative about understanding the zeitgeist of a market that a marketing manager might want to know about, and having to package it for them. So I'm pulling in all this information. I want to put it in a brief that might be no more than one page to read, and has some nice imagery to it, and gives the manager some ideas about how to evolve their campaign, or what they might want to talk to their clients and stakeholders about. And output it in various ways, either in an email digest, putting it in front of them the way that they're interacting with the technology today. Remember, these are non-technical users, so they love to get things in email. They love to get things in their chat interface, or the Gemini interface, as the case may be, and meeting them where they are from a product perspective. How am I doing on time? 1 minute. All right. So to wrap it up, the culture here is like, you need, within an organization that is driving the business and revenue from this creative work and billable hours for creatives, the real trap in actually putting this stuff into production is the business model, or the relationship with the actual customer. So if I'm an agency and I'm working with a big brand, and I have a retainer, and I'm charging the client according to the billable hours of individuals, and I'm trying to use AI to do that, there's a real friction between the existing business and putting these ideas into play. So we're currently at a moment where I haven't said I'm solving this problem particularly, but we're experimenting with different business models, and so you have to take that carefully. Breaking the silos between the different teams. People are very ingrained in this process, so we can disrupt it that way. I talked about AI inspiring form, and then figuring out how to embed this stuff into the existing ways these people are working, existing technologies that they have. So that's what I have for you. Thank you very much. This is where you can find me. This is inspired by a number of articles that I've written for the LA Times, and you can find those at my website as well. Thank you very much.